sea. Fly like a gull, soar high on the air. Be strong in your courage when others despair. Never in anger, never in haste. Go without pride, be never of haste. Freedom is yours if freedom you give. To all give it freely, in freedom you'll live. Mountains that stand up tall to the sky tell us no dreaming is ever too high. Dare to climb boldly, brave that high peak. You'll never know failure if bravely you seek. Dare to be different, dare to be free. Dare to roam far like wind on the sea. Fly like a gull, soar high on the air. Be strong in your courage when others despair. Be strong in your courage when others despair.
Well, good morning, everyone. And to those of you online, good morning. My name is Swami Devaki, and this is Dr. Michelle with me this morning. It's a joy to be here with you all. And the reading this morning is from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita written by Swami Kriya-yoga. And this week is Victory Demands the Courage of Conviction. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ said in the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 10, "Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he that taketh not his cross and followeth me after is not worthy of me. He that findeth, that is to say, that clingeth to his life shall lose it. And he that loseth, in other words, that giveth up his life for my sake, shall find it." God tests the firmness of our faith. The sword described here is a sword of discrimination. The struggle Jesus describes is not a war against unknown enemies, but the struggle with our own attachment to all that is nearest and dear to us, humanly speaking. Ultimately, it is a war against the ego itself and against anything with which we surround ourselves to bolster the ego's fragile sense of security. When Yogananda, as a boy, fled to the Himalayas to embrace a life of solitary meditation, he was apprehended by his older brother Ananda and brought home again. At a certain point, before he would accept defeat, he whispered to his friend Amar, his companion on the flight, "Let us slip away with when opportunity offers. We can go on foot to Rishikesh." But Amar, whose brother had accompanied Ananta, had turned pessimistic, disclaiming any intention of continuing their adventure. Yogananda's memorable comment on Amar's refusal was, he was enjoying the familial warmth. The spiritual warrior rejects that familiar warmth. Rather, he claims the whole universe as his home. And as the Bhagavad Gita puts it in the 14th chapter, unaffected by outward joys and sorrows or by praise and blame, secure in his divine nature, regarding with equal gaze a clod of mud or stone and a bar of gold, impartial toward all experiences, whether pleasant or unpleasant, firm-minded, untouched by either praise or blame, treating everyone alike, whether friend or foe. He is the doer. Such an one has transcended nature's triune qualities, and thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. So in this reading this morning, Swami refers to austerity. And he's talking about austerity not in the sense of all that we deny ourselves or all that we think that we have to deny ourselves. He's talking more in terms of a very bold determination to keep on the spiritual path, to find God, to find the divine. And he also talks about the sword. He talks about the sword not in the sense of the fanatical chopping someone off at the knees, or war, or physical war, or attacking your enemies, as much as he's talking about your own enemies from within, your own attachments, our own bondage to what's outside of ourselves, taking that sword of discrimination and slicing away all of those bonds, all of that bondage that's brought to us by a universal delusion, or Satan, which is extremely conscious, trying always to drive us away from what we know to be true inside and give us more of an attachment to that which is not true, that which is outside of us, that bondage that keeps us clung to matter. And then he also talks about mother against daughter, father against son. He's not trying to discourage us. This is Jesus. He's not trying to discourage us from family dynamics. He's not trying to break up the family unit when he talks about this. What he's talking about, as Master pointed out with the gentleman, the young boy Amar, who couldn't pursue the desire or the dream that Yogananda set before him, which is to pursue God in the Himalayas. He couldn't do that because he was too attached, as Master said, to the familiar warmth. I remember going from college, coming home on the weekends, and your mom fixes you anything you want to eat. They do your laundry. Your father takes care of your car, hands you money if you need it. That's familial warmth that all of us have probably experienced at some point in time. It's wonderful if you meet someone on the path who's going in the same direction as you, someone who wants God in the same way and as great and strongly as you do. That's wonderful. That's a blessing. Many of us don't get that opportunity. But that doesn't mean that because someone is worldly and involved in our life that we still don't have to love them and love the God within them. And so we have this choice. Are we going to give in to the egoic demands that the soul is offered, or are we going to experience more of a universal consciousness, more of an expanded consciousness, and loving the kinship in all of mankind? Many years ago, I had met an individual and I felt a tremendous amount of love for this person. And I happen to have a very strong intuition, as well as a very strong creative imagination. And so oftentimes they cross, and it's difficult to keep them separate and decide what's true intuition and what's really my imagination. So, this individual, my heart just flew open to this person. It was totally unrealistic, the thought that we would ever be together. But my mind kept trying to twist it around and kept trying to look for ways that this could possibly happen. And I prayed to Master. I kept saying, what's real here? Because my mind was saying one thing, my heart was saying something. And of course, to me, it was logical that we would be together because, why not? Why would God bring someone into my life at that point in time, at that level, if it wasn't supposed to be something very deep between us, which it was on an emotional level? So I prayed to Master and I said, well, what's real here? And every time the response was, my heart would open. And it took me a while to understand that what he was saying was that that's the only thing that is real. It's not the form that we see, it's what lies beneath it. And so it was the love that was real in that relationship. And that was really all that I was supposed to learn from that, was that was the reality. It's a tough lesson because whenever we have these experiences, we want to hold on to them. And this is where the austerity comes in. And we have to say, no, don't let it pull you off track. Because first of all, it's going to be nothing but pain when we do that. But it's not being true to who we are. It's not being true to the intuition that we're really feeling and the connection that we're really feeling with the divine. And so when I watched them, so what I started to say was that we think that these things are so important and we hold on to them. And then if you look back 20 years from your life and you look at all the things that have happened and you think, gosh, I wouldn't be who I am today if this had happened. if this path had opened up for me and I had gone, God pulls away from us anything that is not relevant or important for our growth. And that's a very important thing to remember, is to just let it go, because God does know what he's doing. He does have an intention here, but we want to cling. We want to hold on to it because we think it's real. I was watching recently a movie about Joan of Arc, and it was 1927. It was a French movie, and I don't know how many of you watch French movies, but they can be amazingly cathartic. Everything is out there in some of these movies, and it's like, you're gutted by the time you're done watching them. Sometimes it's very purifying, really, emotionally, to watch some of these films. And so this was one of those films where the woman who played Joan of Arc was an amazing actress. And basically what you saw was her face. And the depiction of this movie was said to be very, very true about what really happened with her. Her destiny was to liberate France. And at 19, she dressed as a man. She had hair, the cut of a man. And in this movie, what you saw pretty much was just her face. And you heard some translated English subtitles. And you also saw the face of a lot of those who were condemning her, the priests and the holy people. And they were threatening her on all levels with torture, with death, excommunication from the church. And as you can imagine at that time, how devastating that would have been to someone. And you saw the torment that she definitely went through. And at the end, she finally, they wanted her to sign something that said that everything that happened in her mind was just that, or it was as a product of the devil. And yet she knew, she had these visions, she was following them. She knew that these were true, but she got to the point, they wore her down where she signed the paper. And the man who was accepting the signature said, well, that's good. We're not going to excommunicate you from the church. But we're going to throw you in prison for the rest of your life. And then he left, and she was left alone, and it didn't take her long. And all of a sudden, she had this tremendous revelation that what she had done was wrong. She had completely destroyed anything that she knew to be true. She had completely compromised all of that. And she gained this tremendous amount of strength and this courage that came through. And she called in the people that were standing guard. And she said, bring them back. I'm not. I refuse to sign. I take my signature away. They can do whatever they want with me. Take my signature away. And of course, we know the answer. That's exactly what happened. She ended up being burned at the stake. Now, most of us will not go through something like that in this life, but ultimately, we will all face that test of taking the ego and offering it into that greater, expanded consciousness, no matter the cost, no matter what restrictions we might have or fears that we might have to conquer. And there's a story that I'm going to tell you, and I want to preface it first by when Jesus, of course, who was a master, he had the ability, because of his attunement to God, he had such a strong attunement, his will was so strongly attuned, that he could bring someone like Lazarus back from the dead with his consciousness, showing this omnipresent consciousness through that act. He could also stop energy going into the fig tree so that the fig tree died. He had that ability because of his attunement to God. Saint Francis had the ability to inspire the birds to come to him, to then have them pray with him, and then have him form the shape of a cross and fly off. It was because of his consciousness, that universal consciousness that he was so attuned to. He could take the wolf that came towards him, that was the wolf that had destroyed a lot of, brought a lot of suffering to a village. He brought that wolf towards him, and he changed the consciousness of the wolf. Yogananda could do that. Yogananda, when his most advanced disciple, Rajarsi Janakananda, who passed away from a brain tumor, when he was on the operating table, he said that Yogananda came in and took over his body while he was on the operating table. That was how he treated his close disciple. So any saint or particularly high advanced soul has that ability. They've gotten to that point where they can come in. And that's how, a lot of times animals will fall back, or humans will fall back to an animal. Not often, but they do from time to time, to learn experiences that they need to learn in that particular body. Like the horse that can count up to 25. You never know what soul has been dropped back into that body, so that he's given that ability, that intelligence to do that. And so the story I'm going to tell you is called The Holy Squirrel. And it is about a saint, a very advanced saint. You'll hear these stories from time to time from India about advanced souls who possess either another person or another body or whatever, or another animal. And so this holy person decided that what they wanted to do was possess or come back in as a squirrel. He wanted to be reincarnated. He loved squirrels, and he wanted to be reincarnated as a squirrel. He wanted to nurture the little baby squirrels. He wanted to have a litter of his own, take care of them, watch them grow, feed them. And so he decided to reincarnate. Now, all the townspeople knew that this was a special little squirrel. And if they fed him, that they would have tremendous prosperity. So they watched this little squirrel, and the squirrel had built a nest on a tree that was close to the ocean. And she had to leave, and she had to go and find food for her family. Well, when she came back, there had been a storm, and the ocean had reached up, and it had grabbed the tree, and it had killed all the little babies. And so she was terribly distraught. And she started yelling at the ocean, and she said, "Give them back to me. Why don't you give them back to me?" But nothing. She didn't hear anything. So she'd take her little tail, and she'd dip it in the ocean, and then she'd shake it out on the sand. And she kept doing this every second, every minute, every hour, every day. She was doing it for 7 days. And finally, one of God's angels came down and watched this little squirrel and said, "What are you doing?" And the little squirrel said, "Well, I talked to the ocean. This ocean had the audacity to take my children. And so now what I'm going to do is drain this ocean of all this water." And the angel sat there and kind of humorously smiled and actually laughed and said, "Don't you realize that within 7 days," he said, "you're going to lose that tail. You're going to not have any more fur on that tail from doing this." And the little squirrel said, "I don't care. I don't care. I'm going to take that water and I'm going to drain it from that ocean. If it takes me incarnations until the end of time, I will do that." And 7 days later, sure enough, the angel came back, and the little tail on the squirrel was pretty much shattered. And she said, the angel looked at her and said, "Okay, well, your will is that of the divine. And whatever it is that you say is going to come true. And so we are going to give you back your children. Please stop persecuting the ocean. We're going to give you your children back." And that brought peace to the squirrel. And Yogananda commented on this story, and he said, "Remember, dear student, if all mortal methods of seeking happiness have failed you, do not be discouraged, but rouse your slumbering, all-accomplishing divine determination, and then you will find that the divine laws of God are bound to give you the dream happiness that you desire." So persevere, keep going, All of us have to do this. We're all in this boat together, but Master's with us.
Good morning, friends. I thought I'm still sort of in Italy pilgrimage mode, so I thought I'd share a couple stories this morning inspired by the lives of the saints. And one of the benefits of pilgrimage, obviously, is being able to go to some of these places and sit and meditate where these great saints lived and died, and to tune into their consciousness. But one of the other wonderful things about it was just hearing all the stories, lots of stories. And even if you can't travel far, just consciously tuning into and listening to these stories and spending time with the saints in this way can be very inspiring. So plug for Nirmalan Dharmadas's retreat next weekend. I think it'll be very uplifting. So you've, in recent weeks, heard a lot of stories about St. Francis. I'm going to share another one. Francesco, as he was known. His father was a wealthy Italian cloth merchant, his mother a French noblewoman. And it was expected that he would take on the family business when he came of age. And he was a very popular young man, led a riotous partying life. And as often happens to us, as we go through life, we get a few hard knocks. And so Francesco began to, question what is life really about, and what am I doing with my life? And it was during this period of transition that he stopped at this wayside church outside of the Assisi city walls, church known as San Damiano, about year 1200 or so. And this church had been there for centuries. It tells you how old this church is. And he was praying in this church when Christ on the crucifix spoke to him and said, "Rebuild my church, which you can see is in ruins." And certainly the church around him where he was praying was in ruins. And that's how he interpreted that at the time. And so he went home to his father's shop and grabbed a bunch of the fabrics and bundled them up, and took a horse and rode to a town where there was a very well-known market, and sold the cloths, sold the horse, eventually walked back to Assisi and gave the money to the priest at San Damiano and used this to rebuild the church. And the priest wouldn't take it. The priest knew Francesco's father, who had a reputation for having quite a temper and being a very greedy and worldly man. So he wouldn't take it. And Francesco actually then began to fear his father's wrath. And so he hid in a cave near San Damiano for about a month. And when he emerged from that cave and started walking back toward Assisi, he was followed by a rabble that pelted him with stones and mud. And his father came and dragged him home and beat him and bound him and put him in a locked closet. When his father went away on a business trip, his mom freed him, and Francesco went back to San Damiano and took refuge with the priest. But when his father came back from his trip, he was still not happy, and so he sought out the bishop and demanded justice. And there was a big public trial in the center of town where everyone could come and see. His father was not happy with just the return of the stolen money, as he saw it, but he demanded that Francesco repudiate his inheritance, which Francesco did. And then what he did was he took off the very fine clothes off his back and handed them to his father. And there, naked before the bishop and the whole town, said, "Until this point I've called you Father, but henceforth I shall only call to my heavenly Father." Now, this was unheard of in the time, that a young man would repudiate his family, his wealth, inheritance. But it's actually what freed him for his life's mission. We wouldn't be talking about St. Francis in the year 2025 if he had gone back and sold cloth in his father's shop, right? And the point of this story and of the reading, as Devaki said, is not that we should leave our families and all of that, but it's about consciously choosing God in the spiritual life and putting that as our first priority. And that takes courage. It's not easy to put God in front of things that are comfortable and familiar to us and the life that we've been sort of trained or taught that we should live. And it's also takes courage to trust that God's going to take care of us and look after us. I'm going to share another brief story. This is St. Clare, Santa Chiara, and her sister, who became St. Agnes. Clare very much wanted to follow the spiritual life. She heard St. Francis preaching in one of the local churches in town and studied with him for some time. And her father very much wanted to marry her off, because that's what happened in those days. And she knew that she didn't want that. And she managed to sort of delay it for a year or two, but there was coming a time where she couldn't any longer. And so with St. Francis's help and the friars, she was able to flee from home, and Francis had her go spend some time in a monastery. And her father was not happy about this, but he acquiesced. But then 16 days later, her younger sister, Agnes, followed suit and came and joined Clare in the monastery. And their father was just, this was too much. So he sent some knights to go bring Agnes back home. And so Agnes is pleading with her sister Clare for help. And the knights come in, and they come to grab Agnes, and Agnes's body becomes so heavy that they can't move her. These are grown knights, and they couldn't move this little woman. Her uncle tried to strike her, and he became temporarily paralyzed. So the knights went home and left Clare and Agnes in peace. God looks after us when we choose him, sometimes in remarkable ways. Yesterday morning, I often like to sort of understand how the affirmation pairs with the reading. And I hadn't read the affirmation yet. I just knew the topic was positive thinking. And I was thinking, why, Swami, did you pair this affirmation with this topic? And within like 1 or 2 seconds of asking that question in my mind, a song came to me. A song that I haven't thought about in decades, that I learned in my elementary school music class. And I'm going to color outside the lines a little bit, as Dharmadas likes to say. And I'm going to sing a few lines of this song. You've got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between. To illustrate my last remark. Jonah in the whale, Noah in the ark. What did they do just when everything got so dark? Man, they said you gotta accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. No, don't mess with Mr. In Between. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. But we do. And that's why we lose the courage of our convictions. Mr. In Between is the voice of the ego. You've got to be crazy to think that you're going to do that. What is so-and-so going to think if you do X? Right? We've all heard that voice. We've all listened to it, myself included. The thing I take heart from the story from St. Francis, he hid for 30 days in a cave. Saints aren't made overnight. They go through the same tests and trials we do. And what I like to think is every time we face this question of, do I want to do what's comfortable and safe or do I want to choose God? We get a little stronger every time. Even if we don't choose God. We, over time, I think, become more and more certain that the things in this world, they're not going to bring us happiness. And what I really want is you, God. Like we say every week in the festival, I choose thy love. I choose only thee. And when our hearts say that and mean it 100%, God knows. And then our union with him isn't far off. God bless you all.
In India there lived by the banks of a stream a hermit whose prayers chose applause for their theme. He gazed at the flowers and he smiled at the sun. Then he clapped with delight. Lord, he cried, oh, well done.
Well done, Lord, oh, very well done. The mountains and love with the gypsy clouds, the fields smile to welcome the sun. All nature sings praises aloud. The fields smile to welcome the sun. All nature sings praises aloud. The trees dance to show their elation. A day on God's earth has begun, and every true heart in creation in speechless wonder is bound. And every true heart in creation in speechless wonder is bound. Well done, Lord, oh, very well done. The joy that you planted in children's hearts, the thrill known in bearing a son, the hope when a trial departs, the thrill known in bearing a son, the hope when a trial departs, the gladness of men in their neighbors, of youth and its victories won. Our joys are the proof of your labors. How wonderful, Lord, are your arts. Our joys are the proof of your labors. How wonderful, Lord, are your arts. Well done, Lord, oh, very well done. At last I discovered the mystery secretive one, replies to your sweetness in me. The world's joy, oh secretive one, replies to your sweetness in me. For here in my heart lies the answer, your love shedding light like the sun. All life seems to leap like a dancer, when gazing I see only thee. All life seems to leap like a dancer, when gazing I see only thee.